Hey, kia ora guys. Before we get into today's podcast, just want to do a quick shout out and thank you to all the people that have reached out to me in person, through DMs, have called me, dropped me emails and all those sorts of things with my recent health issue. I am doing much better. I am training and I am taking doctor's advice and so on and so forth. But I just want to say thank you to all my friends out there, old and new, even some that I didn't know that I had, for taking the time to reach out. I appreciate it, and it means the absolute world to me, and I will continue to do my best to try and bring something into the world, into our community that has value. So thank you guys. Hei mi aroa ki o koutou, me o koutou awhinatanga. I ngā wā katoa. Chief of War is a TV show that is produced by the very famous Jason Momoa. Jason is an actor of Hawaiian culture, Hawaiian ancestry, and very proudly so. And you know him as Aquaman. He's been in a slew of different action movies and TV roles. But I'm really excited about Chief of War. It's a story that originates in Hawaii and talks a lot about the history and the warrior tradition there. And I'm sure, just like every other story, there are liberties and there are things which are shortened and lengthened and changed and all that sort of stuff, as often happens. But I think it's a beautiful representation. Now, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination, any kind of expert on the Hawaiian culture, not even close. But what I think is that it's a step towards understanding indigenous martial arts and the indigenous culture and what it means to be a warrior, what it means to be a chief, and what it means to serve others through that warrior culture. And that's why I've called this one a native affair. Kia ora, I'm Tuari Dawson, and you're listening to the Invisible Sensei podcast. Before we get into the specifics, I want to talk about a little bit, at least, about my relationship with the Kingdom of Hawaii. I'm very lucky in that I've spent time there with native Hawaiian people. And I'm not going to make the mistake of thinking that I have, as a visitor to that country, any kind of insight or any kind of deep knowledge about their culture. So I'm going to refrain from talking about specifics in terms of the culture and of the story. But I will give you my perspectives. A number of the cast, because partially the TV series was filmed here in Aotearoa in New Zealand. And so one of the things which is really exciting, at least for our community, for the Māori community, is it's a real combination of indigenous Māori people and kanaka Māori from Hawaii, playing different roles, getting an opportunity to tell a story which is not actually the story of the Māori people, but it's an important story nonetheless. And what's exciting is that it's being told by the Hawaiian people. Now, I don't know Jason Momoa, but I do know a number of the cast members, and it's exciting. It's exciting because the depiction that I'm seeing, and I'm enjoying the show, is different because it moves away from stereotype. And in the past few years, whenever you see kind of Polynesian characters, it's kind of like the gutsy sidekick or something like that. Jason Momoa plays Kama Aina, who is a warrior chief, and he's exiled. I'm not going to do spoilers, but what kind of unfolds during that story and during the series is that there is the desire to engage in battle, to create territory, to fulfill prophecies, and the scope of the TV series is large. The story is humongous. King Kamehameha is featured prominently, and as I said in the opening, look, I'm not any kind of historian, and I wouldn't pretend to tell the story of Hawaiian people. But what I can say is that it's exciting to see the Polynesian martial arts depicted in a way which is closer to what it actually was. In Hawaii, there is an age-old martial art called lua, which incorporates many different schools and techniques and weapons and districts, philosophies, and there's a whole beautiful discourse about that if you're willing to spend some time, make some connections, and get on this old internet thing, I'm sure you can find out more accurate information than I can give you. But what I can say is that the weapons that they're using, there's slings, there's a weapon called leo manu, which is like a club that has shark's teeth. There's all sorts of incredible weapons. I particularly like the slings. And I also like the fact that men and women are fighting side by side. There is often a connotation in, I guess, the stereotypical Polynesian thing where the men are the warriors and women are sitting at home weeping and wailing. Now, I can say that all the Polynesian, all the Māori women, all the Pacific Island women that I know, the Hawaiian women that I know, are warriors, bar none. And so it's nice to sort of see in this production them being painted in a somewhat more accurate depiction. So there's a number of fights. There's a number of, there's a number of battles. And one in particular is one where people are coming, I'm trying to not spoil it for you, but people are fighting in the water, offshore. And, it's really amazing the range of weapons that people are using. There's long-range weapons, there's spears, projectile weapons, there's long clubs, there's different kinds of slings. And I think one of the things that I'm really enjoying is that in past depictions, I've noticed that, at least for me, and I have a longer background in Māori martial traditions than I do in the Okinawa or the Japanese ones. There is this kind of thing where they're using these weapons, these traditional Polynesian weapons, in a way that is consistent with what you might see in a modern martial arts movie. A kung fu movie, or, it's like fencing. And what I'm really enjoying about it is that there is a kind of a ruthlessness and an efficiency to how these weapons and empty hand techniques are being depicted. I'm going to Okinawa in a few weeks, and I'm going to be teaching some seminars up there in Maupatu. Maupatu is the short club and one of the many weapons of the Māori people. And so I have a vested interest in watching these things because I just think it's so wonderful that we're getting an accurate or a more accurate depiction of the techniques. And I think the thing too, at least that I take away from it, is the idea that there is a strong element of pragmatism in the techniques. Not as flashy, perhaps, as you see in the average martial arts movies, but the idea that there is a end goal, and that what you're trying to do is you're trying to be as efficient as possible, use the least amount of energy to achieve the end goal. And it's vicious, it's quick, but it makes a point. And I think that's what I like about the tradition that I come from, that my impression is that it is all about being functional. It's all about being fierce. And when I say fierce, I mean making a point with the violence. If you're going to fight, then make a point with it. Do it well. Do it so well, in fact, that the person who runs up on you after you've defeated the first person is not going to want to fight you if they see what you did to the person prior to them. And, it's not about violence for violence sake. It's not about fighting for fighting's sake. It's about protection. It's about setting boundaries. And when you watch the TV series, there's what, in Māori we would call a tikanga. There's a protocol to the way that you do things. It's about honour, and it's about respect. And I think what the show does really, really well is give an insight into some of those concepts. The idea of mana And I suggest mana is too big a concept for me to go into, but in essence, mana is kind of spiritual gravity, spiritual power, your presence, all that sort of stuff. Mana, when you meet someone who has true mana, there's a certain sense of gravity about that person that they don't need to be demonstrative. They don't even need to be loud. Just their presence is enough. And I think that when I watch Chief of War, I'm seeing a lot of that coming into play. What's interesting is that Jason Momoa has utilised and sought people who are not necessarily actors, but people who could depict and bring something of a lived experience to the role. And when we think of warriors, we think of warriors as, I guess, from a Western perspective, from a Western lens, you think of someone who can dominate others. And what I like about it is the show, that is that it talks about the idea of the leader being a servant. And there's complex relationships. And there is what some people might call spirituality. In Māori we call it te awairua, the spiritual world, the spiritual realm, I guess. And I like how that's woven in, because that's an integral part of the martial tradition. Now, I think that if you watch the show, you're going to pick up different things. And I encourage you, if you're going to watch it, to do your own study, come to your own informed opinions, get online, see what the history is, because it's an amazing history. I've loved the fact that there are so many Polynesian people of different ethnicities involved in it as well. There's also a massive presence of the traditional tatau or tāmoko, the tattooing, which is amazing to see. And I particularly love the fact that women are depicted as strong, independent, and ultimately self-contained warriors with a deep love of the land, with a deep love of family, with a deep love of culture. And that's kind of what appeals to me. It's hard for me, I suppose, to articulate these things because they are kind of intrinsic, and it's sort of part and parcel of the experience. But I think that basically it really comes down to why you fight and what you fight for, what you want to leave behind, and the legacy that you are fighting to preserve. I also love the fact that they speak Olelo Hawaii, which is a traditional language of the Hawaiian people. And at certain points, they're speaking English and so on and so forth. But I love the fact that they're speaking their own indigenous language. And there's music, there's spirituality, there's some incredible themes which are covered in the show. And I honestly encourage you to watch it. There are also some really wonderful movies that I would encourage you to watch too. Coming from out of Aotearoa, there is Deadlands, which was a movie that came out, I want to say, about 6 years ago, which was kind of had a similar intent. It was a single movie, and it talked about, the warrior culture within Aotearoa. And I'm putting it there very succinctly, but I think it relates really well to what the team, Jason Momoa, is doing with Chief of War. I think it brings people into the conversation, and it gets people to reflect. Now, I'm not Hawaiian. You may not be Hawaiian. Maybe you are. Lucky. But I think that we all have something really interesting to learn about what it is to be warrior. And what is a warrior? And what is the role of a warrior? And what is not a warrior? What is chiefly behavior and what is chieftainship? And for me, it's about the decisions you make, the life you choose to live, and whether or not you choose to live with the consequences of those choices, and make amends and seek to right wrongs and to create balance. So what am I really trying to say? I suppose for me, the thing that I really enjoy is the fight scenes, but I also enjoy the fact that there is a strong cultural narrative that runs through Chief of War. I like the fact that there are those intangibles which are presented with such dignity as to make anyone who watches it, or put people who watch it in a place where they can relate to the themes, even if they don't speak the language, even if they don't speak the culture. And I think it's timely. I think it's interesting that it's come now. I think there are so many things happening in the world that are trying to encourage us to be frightened of people who are different than us. And I think this is a really wonderful way of having an insight into the travel of a noble people, of an indigenous people, for us to look at what their travel has been and to have open and honest conversations and to find ways to move on together. In Aotearoa at the moment, there is a movement towards banning our language, banning our culture, and minimising our history and our contribution to the country. There's the idea that we are all one, and that if you're different, then somehow that makes you wrong. And for me, Chief of War represents the idea that being different is a strength, not a weakness. That we have an opportunity to learn from people who don't speak the same language we do or believe the same things we do. And I think if you don't take anything else away from the show but that, then that's been a worthwhile experiment. Then that's been a worthwhile experience. I highly recommend it, but I also highly recommend you to have a think about researching the history. Have a think about your history. Have a think about what chieftainship and honour and virtue and integrity mean to you on the day-to-day. I got many things out of watching the Chief of War. And, there's definitely the impact of colonisation and weapons and this whole bunch of different themes, too numerous to name here. But I think it asks exciting questions. I think that for those of us who have an interest in indigenous arts, whether that be karate or kobudo or iaido or muay thai or the Filipino martial arts, whatever art you're interested in, I think there's something in that we can all learn from. What is it that we bring to the table? What is it of ourselves and our lived experience that we bring into our training? How do we impart these things with honour and integrity in a way that serves our communities? And for me, I think my time living in Hawaii and my visits back and my interactions with the Hawaiian people have shown me and have taught me the aloha spirit, which is kind of a bit of a catchphrase. People say aloha this, aloha that, but the aloha spirit is one of fortitude. It is one of grace, of kindness, of empathy, of resilience. And I believe we can all take something away from that kind of message. So, Chief of War, Jason Momoa, incredible cast. Have a check out of it. And I encourage you to look past the fighting, to look past the violence. There's a fair bit of violence. But all in context, and see how it relates to you and your story and how you want to live in the world. I think that's a true gift of the Chief of War, the true gift of the aloha spirit, the true gift of being curious about someone other than ourselves.